Okay, it's been a long time since I've done tier lists, and recently I found a couple of tier lists that I actually wanted to go through. Specifically today, we're going to be going through all the major DC releases in the forms of live action movies and TV shows, animated movies and TV shows. About a year and a half ago, maybe, I did do an all live action films tier list, where a lot of what was involved in that tier list is here on this tier list. Now, you guys can go back and watch that video of me doing that, but what I always say about rankings and tier lists, and frankly just opinions, it can change. How you felt one day can be drastically different on how you will feel in a year. So there's a good chance this will look different. Now, I do have another tier list that I do want to do. We're going to do that on another day though, and depending on how long this one is, I might make it 2 parts. So with that being said, let's get into this tier list. So what I've done here is obviously the usual S, A, B, C, D, and F. To make it a little more explanatory, instead of just making it letters, I put amazing for S, great for A, good for B, mediocre for C, bad for D, terrible for F. And because I do 100% know there are a couple of things I have not seen here, I put haven't seen. Kicking it off with Man of Steel. I have talked so many times on this channel why I love this movie, why I love Henry Cavill's Superman, and why it's my second favorite comic book film of all time. And because of that, that's getting booted up right into S. That's easy. One of the easiest decisions I'll ever make in my life. Around the same time this movie came out, I read Earth 1 Superman. And that is by far my favorite Superman origin story and my favorite Superman comic book I ever read. It actually helped me change my perspective on Superman. And then when Man of Steel came out, I wasn't all that excited because Superman movies I did tend to find felt a little boring at the age I was. And when I saw this movie, it completely changed my perspective, and I have a much deeper love for the character now. All right, Batman vs. Superman twice, and obviously the first one here is the theatrical version, and the second one is the extended cut. The theatrical version, I know there has not been the nicest things to say about that movie. In all honesty, when I saw this movie in theaters, I did not hate it by any means. However, I did see that movie 4 times, and every time I saw it, I did open my eyes to noticing how much the movie was really missing things, and the fact that Warner Brothers took a huge chunk of the movie out, and that's why it ended up being the way it was in theaters. So because of that, I'm going to throw it in good. You could 100% say mediocre, but I'm going to put it in B because even when seeing it in theaters, I didn't hate it by any means. I thought there were issues, but I still enjoyed it. However, Batman vs. Superman, the extended cut, yeah, that's going in S as well. I do not care. I already know that there are going to be people who watch this and don't like this and will claim you are not a real DC fan. Well, you can shove it right up your ass. For someone who's been reading DC comics and who has loved DC since I was like 4-5 years old, and I like these movies, you have no right to tell me if I'm a real DC fan or not. Batman vs. Superman, that is until Zack Snyder's Justice League, it is the only Batman and Superman live action movie we have. I appreciate it for that alone. If you said unbiasedly, Tyrell, what would this rating be for the movie? I would maybe say an 8 out of 10. Of course, biasedly, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. However, it does not matter. 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 10 out of 10, I don't care. I think this movie has a lot more good about it than it does have bad. It's going in S. David Ayer's Suicide Squad. Unfortunately, this has to go in the bad section. I understand David Ayer got screwed over so hard when making this movie, and the movie we saw is not his true film. I do believe that there is his cut of this film out there somewhere. I don't know if it makes the movie better, but I do have to believe that it at least makes it a bit better than what we got. I think Suicide Squad is actually solid at the beginning of the movie, maybe the first half an hour, it is worthy of a good at the very least. But then the next 3/4 of the film, yeah, I'm sorry, it's bad. All right, the first live action Wonder Woman. I'm going to put this in good as well, and I am going to put it in front of theatrical Batman vs Superman because I think it's a better good than that version of the movie. When I first saw Wonder Woman, I would have put this in A. The reason why I have it at a B now is because I think it is a good movie, but there's something about the movie that does not pull me in. I don't sit here and say, oh my goodness, this is one of the best comic films I've ever seen. I think there are moments of the film that are perfectly captured, so well done. But then I think there are moments of the film that A, could have been done better, or B, just really aren't all that great to begin with. The end of the movie especially, the battle against Ares, I'm sorry, it sucks. It's not good. But for the first live action film of Wonder Woman, you can't go wrong here. Shazam, the first one. I'm putting this bad boy in mediocre because it's actually not bad, but it's also not great. I think it's right in the middle. It's very 50-50. I think Zachary Levi is far better of a Shazam in this movie than he is in the second movie. Overall, I just feel like Shazam is a complete detachment from what DC was even like a year or two before this movie came out. It did not flow right. It didn't really sit well with me, and it was actually the first DC movie that came out that I did not go see in theaters, and ever since then there has now been a multitude of DC movies I don't go see in theaters. Unfortunately, in my opinion, this movie did start a spiral of poor DC content. Unfortunately, that movie started a spiral of how poor DC movies would become moving forward, and it kind of sucks. Okay, this is Joss Whedon's Justice League. We're gonna shove this piece of crap in terrible. It is awful from the ground up. It is by far one of the worst films I've ever seen. What happened behind the scenes, the explanation of a lot of people who worked on it, a lot of the cast like Ben, Gal, Jason, Ray Fisher, it wasn't a good vibe. This movie, in my opinion, could not go anywhere else. You could not even convince me to put it in bad. That movie is if Joss Whedon and Warner Brothers horked and spit it in our face. I really hate that film with a passion. Aquaman. Once again, when I first saw this film, I would have put it in good, but today I'm going to put it in mediocre, but I will throw it ahead of Shazam because once again, I think it is a little bit better of a mediocre film. There's no way to twist that into a compliment. It doesn't sound right. Once again, with mediocre, 50 good, 50 bad, I think Atlantis was done well. I actually think Jason Momoa is solid in that film. I think Patrick Wilson absolutely kills it as Ocean Master. I think Black Manta is really cool, but overall the story is boring. The arc of the entire movie is overplayed that to the point where you've seen it in so many different films that aren't just comic book movies. And the fact that the structure of what the movie was building off from and where it was going, we still really have no idea. I truly don't know what this movie was trying to do and how it was trying to fit in an overall connected universe. I always say this, I love saying it, and I will never, ever stop saying it. Aquaman is the best Marvel movie that DC has ever made, and because of that, I have to at least put it in the middle of the road and give them kudos for at least trying. Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey, once again, I think it would have been a movie once upon a time that I would have said maybe mediocre, but yeah, it's just bad. I will at the very least put it ahead of Suicide Squad, but it's a bad movie. I really don't know what the heck this was. Imagine making a movie like this and not even featuring Joker once. The best part of the film is Ewan McGregor as Black Mask. And even in saying that, I actually don't like how Black Mask was written in the movie. Yet he still makes up the movie at the very least. Once again, this movie is just continuing the spiraling nature that Shazam caused from 2019 into 2020. Wonder Woman 84, a sequel that was supposed to capitalize off of how good the first movie was, and it almost felt like they didn't even bother trying for the second movie. This is another movie that is bad. You could 100% say terrible, and I wouldn't argue with you. I'm saving terrible for the things that are absolutely putrid, like Joss Whedon's Justice League. I don't think Wonder Woman 84 is so low on the totem pole of being absolutely horrendous that it deserves that. But yeah, it's just not a good movie in any way. It's at the very most a 4 out of 10. Zack Snyder's Justice League, here's another S. And I'm actually going to keep it right behind Batman vs. Superman because there's a vibe Batman vs. Superman has that I like just a little more than Zack Snyder's Justice League. But overall, chef's kiss. He made a 4-hour epic out of a superhero film that did not feel rushed, and it pretty much capitalized and gave us everything we would have wanted in a movie like that. Also, just like a Batman and a Superman movie, the only one we have, this is the only Justice League movie we have, so it definitely deserves points for that as well. James Gunn's Suicide Squad. Sorry, this is going in mediocre, and at the very least, I'll put it ahead of Aquaman. It's just not for me. And for some reason, whenever you discount something James Gunn has done, there just becomes a whole group of people who hate you for it. And it is what it is. I don't really care. It's how I feel. It's not a movie I would ever watch again. It's not my vibe. I don't enjoy the comedy. If your type of humor is poo-poo pee-pee, then you're probably going to like this movie. I do appreciate how much better Rick Flag is presented in this movie. You can't go wrong with Idris Elba, and the fight they have at the end of the film is really great too. Peacemaker is another one I'm gonna have to put in mediocre, and we're gonna put it right behind Aquaman. When I finally came around to watch this show, because I had no interest in watching it, but when I made a review for it, I have it on the channel. I even said like this show's an 8 out of 10. Now when I actually think about it, I don't think it's that great. I do think a lot of the times with comic book material, you can really get caught up in the moment of it. And sometimes in the moment, everything feels grand and great. But when you take a step back and look at it a little bit later, you realize, yeah, this really was not all that great. I was just too hyped up on the moment. That's how I feel about Peacemaker. Once again, if you just want poo-poo pee-pee jokes, this is the show for you. If you just want mindless comedy that does not even make sense, this is the show for you. I will say the story is solid. I actually did get invested. John Cena gave a great performance. But other than that, no one else in the show is very memorable, or would I even say good. Yes, not even Vigilante. Black Adam, you know, I'm pretty sure I put this movie in a B tier before. The more I think about it, it is absolutely a C. I'm actually going to put it in front of Aquaman here, and let me explain why. The movie truly is not that good, but boy is it entertaining. Have you ever just watched guilty pleasure films? That's what Black Adam is to me. However, if there is one thing that is so damn good, it is Pierce Brosnan's Dr. Fate and the guy who plays Hawkman. Very, very well done. The costumes, the performance, the presentations of the characters. Shazam, Fury of the Gods. This is another one I think I have a review for it on the channel, so I won't go too far into it because if you guys want to know, you can just watch it. This movie is bad. Might I almost say terrible. It is... I'm not going to put it in terrible. I'm not. But it is going to go to the bottom of the barrel of bad. Like, it is worse than Wonder Woman 84. I would say maybe the saving grace of this movie is literally Grace Caroline, who plays Mary Marvel, but she isn't in it as nearly as much as I wanted her to be, and she's not as much of a main focus as I thought she was going to be. Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu, always, you know, great actresses, but their characters are so poorly done. The movie is a damn near terrible film, but I do not hate it as much as I do hate Joss Whedon's Justice League, so I'm gonna put it in bad. However, joining the F club is going to be The Flash. I think a movie that literally loses you $350 million deserves to be in this category. When you look at literally everything poor this movie did, the CGI, the character representations, the set pieces, what they did to my boy Ben Affleck with that cowl and some of his lines, yeah, this movie deserves to be in terrible. Oh, it's the best movie since The Dark Knight. Shut the hell up. Blue Beetle. I know there's going to be some people here that won't like this, but that's too bad. We're shoving that in D, and we're going to put it just ahead of Shazam because it is a little bit better, but it's still really bad. This movie was not made for theaters. It should have never come out in theaters. I don't know why this movie was made in the first place. It is the most generic comic book film that literally steals every single idea it has from any other comic book movie you've ever seen, especially Marvel, which is clearly the vibe DC wants to go for. They want to be Marvel now, which is a really weird decision. But the movie is obnoxious and terrible from beginning to end. The entire family is so insufferable. The dialogue is horrendous. The action scenes are so bad. Sorry, I said it. It's not a good movie. It's got to go down here for me. Aquaman 2. This is the first haven't seen, and I don't know if I'm ever going to watch it. I really just have no interest in giving it a watch at all. We'll see, maybe down the line. Who knows? The Batman. I'm pretty sure I have this in S and other tier lists, but gonna have to put it in great. I think it is a beautiful movie from beginning to end. However, it is one of the most overrated great movies. There are so many people who talk about this like it is a godsend, like it is the savior of all comic book films, especially representation of Batman. And I mean, for me, myself, Robert Pattinson kills it. Matt Reeves is a great director. Zoe Kravitz, Paul Dano, the list goes on. But it's not like we've been suffering from a lack of good Batman content, but for some reason people treat it that way and that it has fixed the problems with Batman. I don't understand it. I never will, but still, it is a great movie. Batman Begins. I'm gonna go up and put this in S. Now, I don't necessarily know where I would rank this amongst the four, so I'm just gonna keep it there for now. Batman Begins, in a lot of ways, is responsible for kickstarting my love for Batman even prior The Dark Knight, and its origin story, its beginning of this Batman world is so beautifully crafted. I still think Batman Begins is one of the movies, along with Spider-Man 1 and 2, that really told the world, hey, you can take comic book movies seriously. You don't need to take comic book movies and make it its own genre. You can take characters from comic books and throw them within a genre. That's when comic book movies were really damn good. Joker. I might have put this in S before. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm going to put it in great. I think it's a really great Elseworld story of Joker that is not being conformed to what the Joker is popularly in a lot of media we see today. Joaquin Phoenix, killer performance, and Todd Phillips, it might be the best movie he's ever directed. Okay. There might be some people who disagree with me on this one too, but I'm going to have to do it. Batman Forever is going to go into bad, and it'll go at the bottom of the barrel there. And Batman and Robin, yeah, that's going to go in terrible too. I don't think I necessarily need to explain why these go where they go, so we're going to leave it at that. The Dark Knight, I'm not going to go into detail because I've already gone into detail on this channel so many times why I love this movie, what it means to me, and the fact that because of its existence, I do what I do today. It is my favorite film of all time, comic book film or not. This is going at the very front of S, as it always will until the end of time. Then The Dark Knight Rises. I'm also going to put this movie in S, but 100% I could understand people's arguments if they think it's great. maybe good. I don't know, but that's as far as I would go. When I watched that movie, I still love it. I saw that movie an unhealthy amount of times in theaters. Not even sure if I should disclose how many times I saw it. However, when I watch it more, there are certain things that I maybe would have done differently myself, or even production-wise, there are actually some editing errors I notice in that film. Regardless, it's still a beautiful ending to the most perfect Batman trilogy I think we will ever get. Okay, Batman with Michael Keaton, the first one. I'm gonna put it in good. I'm not a big fan of Michael Keaton's Batman. I'm not a big fan of Tim Burton. Not a big fan of Jack Nicholson as the Joker. I know what this movie means to the comic book industry and the film industry. And even though I'm not a huge fan of it, I still think overall it's an enjoyable watch. I have to give it respect and put it in good. This is another one that I know a lot of people are going to be like, it's so damn good, and I'm just going to have to say, no, I'm sorry, I don't think so. I'm going to have to put Batman Returns in mediocre, and at the very least, it's going to go ahead of James Gunn's Suicide Squad. I'm just very thrown off on what he does with Catwoman in the movie, how he handles Penguin in the movie, and I'm just, like I said, I'm not a fan of Tim Burton's vibe. At the end of the day, there's nothing I could actually do about that. If he just does not vibe with me, I'm simply just not going to like his movies. But because of the respect and because I actually understand it can be an enjoyable watch, I will put Batman at least in good. Then you got Batman with Adam West. Now, I can't really tell here if one is the movie and if one is a TV show, or maybe if they're both movies. I don't really know. But both of these, I'm going to put in good as well. I mean, if I had a choice between this and something else I really liked, would I watch them? No, probably not. But growing up, I used to watch this as a kid, and I really enjoyed it. And I think it is a perfect embodiment of who Batman was back in the golden age. And everything else in the show is perfect. Cesar Romero as a Joker, that's another chef kiss moment. His ridiculous gadgets, the way the Batmobile looked, the Batcave as well, it is really good. Okay, Superman 1 and 2. 1, we're gonna put in great, and I think that is because it is a great interpretation of Superman for the very first time on the big screen worldwide. Yes, we've had Superman live action before, but this was the first time it was on the silver screen. And then Superman 2, I don't know what version this is. I would prefer Richard Donner's version. I'm going to go with the Richard Donner director's cut, and because of that, we're going to put that in S. I think Superman 2 is one of the greatest Superman movies ever made, just behind Man of Steel. Superman 3, I don't know if this deserves to go into bad or terrible. So for now, I am going to put it in bad. Supergirl, I've actually never seen this movie. I do know that it is bad or terrible from some of the things I've seen online and what people have to say about it. Just to be fair, I'm going to put it in haven't seen. For Superman 4, this is going to have to go into terrible. It is one of the worst comic films I've ever watched. Even when I first watched it as a kid, I still thought it was one of the worst movies I've ever watched at the time. It is just a terrible cap off of Christopher Reeve's Superman. I just had to go on IMDb to see the rating that movie had, and it sits at a 3.7 out of 10. Realistically though, at the end of the day, Christopher Reeve's Superman ends at Superman 2. Next is Superman Returns, and I'm gonna have to put this movie in bad. I am, though, going to put it at the best of the bad films, so right at the front, I guess. Is that a compliment? This movie simply was not needed at all, and simply really wasn't that good. This was a film that was made to be another Christopher Reeve Superman film in a time where nobody really wanted that, and we wanted something new and fresh. I think there are neat parts in the movie, saving the plane, and even though it doesn't really make that much sense, lifting the Kryptonite island out of Earth. However, the best part of this movie, and yeah, I'm gonna say it, is Kevin Spacey's Lex Luthor, in which I actually believe he is the best live-action Lex Luthor we've ever had. I don't think Brandon Routh is a bad Superman. I don't think he's great either, but he's definitely serviceable. Super Pets, I haven't seen it, so we're gonna have to put it in haven't seen. Constantine, I've seen this movie one time, and I have to be honest with you, I can't really remember it. I don't want to go out here and say it's a good or mediocre or bad or anything like that. So because of that, I am just for the time being gonna shove it in haven't seen, because it would be unfair for me to give it a rating here that I can't even really remember. And now guys, to end off part 1 of this video, we have Green Lantern with Ryan Reynolds, and this is a movie that I am struggling between bad and terrible, but you know what? I don't despise this movie like I do those 4 in terrible. I'm gonna have to put it in bad. Oh wow, I would maybe actually put Green Lantern above Blue Beetle because I really did not like Blue Beetle. You know what? I might even throw it ahead of Suicide Squad on bad. I mean, they're all bad, but yeah. Wow. There's really only one thing keeping this movie from being terrible, and that's Mark Strong as Sinestro. The environment of how Oa looked, I believe if I remember correctly, it is neat to see on screen. It still doesn't make up for how bad of a movie it is. Okay guys, that is the end of part 1. I'm sure there are a lot of people who are not going to agree with some of my decisions as of right now, and that's okay. That's why we have different tastes. It is what it is. Let me know what are some of the things that would maybe look different on your list, but I will see you guys on part 2, and until then, I'll talk to you all very soon.